Another edition of the Tuesday at 11 a.m. live streams. As you guys know, we do a live stream each and every week based on the feedback of agents in the Facebook group, from the podcast, and people that I just talk to on a weekly basis. And we try to deliver topics based on your suggestions and just really things that we think that people need to know or is kind of top of mind. And so today we're going to be doing a topic really based on a lot of the conversations that I've been having recently with agents that are considering joining the inner circle. I do a call every Wednesday at 10:30 with people who are considering joining the inner circle, and we talk through different investing strategies. We talk about where they're at, where they want to go, and how to bridge the gap. And if you ever want to jump on a call with me, if you're thinking about joining the inner circle or just want to get kind of a free one-on-one, consultation with me, you can do that by going to www.agentinvestorinnercircle.com. Having said that, I talk to a lot of different agents every week that are considering joining the inner circle. One thing that pops up all the time that's really making me lead this conversation today is I inevitably get agents that say to me that they're not ready to invest yet. They're worried that it's going to basically throw off their retail side of their business. They're concerned that if they make time for investing, it's going to hurt their sales. And actually, this is probably one of the biggest misnomers out there about real estate investing in general, which is that it's a completely different business from being a real estate agent. In fact, one of the biggest premises that I have with Agent Investor is the combination of the two. The combination of being an agent and an investor at the same time is really extremely powerful. And it's all based on the premise that being an agent investor means that you're building a seller-based business. It means that while you may be working with buyers on deals, while you may be still taking buyer referrals, and while you still may have a buyer business, your main focus is obtaining seller appointments. And the reason that we're so focused on getting seller appointments is because the whole agent investor model is based on getting a face-to-face seller appointment and having both the option of giving them a cash offer and potentially listing the property, right? And depending on who the seller is, depending on what makes sense for them and their needs, if they're thinking about selling their house, they've got two great options, right? They can take a quick cash offer, no contingencies, easy. They don't even have to clean out their house. Or they could, try to get the most amount of money for their home, maybe make some repairs, deal with some inspection items, have a little bit more hassle and headache, but potentially get more money. So today I want to talk more about why I think it's so important that real estate agents in 2023 build a seller-based business. And this goes for every agent. I don't even care if you just are kind of thinking maybe I want to invest, but I'm not focused on investing. This is still extremely relevant. I believe in 2023, those that have a buyer-based business are at risk more than ever of potentially getting knocked out of the business. And I'm going to tell you why in a few minutes. But essentially, long story short, I believe in 2023, even if you're an agent who doesn't even care about investing, I think you need to build a seller-based business. And I've kind of written down some bullet points that I want to talk about today. And of course, as you guys know, we're live. So if anybody ever has any questions during this whole entire time, all that you need to do is pop a question in the comment section and I'll answer it for you. So we are live. And I do want to just start off with the why. Why do I believe that real estate agents in 2023, not that they should build a seller-based business, but that they need to survive? So we've talked a lot about the MLS PIN settlement and how that may potentially impact the real estate world. We now know that it is extremely likely that within the next few months that there will no longer be a requirement to offer buyer side compensation in the multiple listing service. And I did a whole presentation, and I actually did a whole video with Jason Goldfarb, who's in my office, a top producer, and Chris Martin, who's my team leader, about how we think that may impact the business. Now, fair warning, nobody knows for sure how that MLS ping settlement and how the fact that you no longer need to put a buyer side commission into the MLS pin may impact the business. But we do know this. There is potential that buyer agents are going to need to get paid from the buyers directly. If that happens, it is very likely that buyer agents will end up making less money. Okay, not a guarantee. And there are so many things that could happen related to this MLS ping settlement. All I know is that if I'm given a choice and I'm a real estate agent in 2023, and I can choose to spend my time going out prospecting for buyers or spending my time prospecting for sellers, it's a no-brainer, because the seller side, we know what's going to happen with the seller side, right? There are no changes on the horizon for the seller side part of the business. We do know that there are changes coming. We don't know exactly what the changes are, but we do know changes are coming with the buyer side. So, I look at investing, I look at business, first all about risk. So I'm going to say I'm going to focus definitely on sellers. The other reason why I would be focusing on sellers and not buyers, and some of these things are going to be obvious, by the way. Some of these things you're going to say, duh, I know this already. But I just want to be clear why I'm so serious about pushing agents, both in my office and people that will listen to me outside of my office, to a seller side business. The second reason is that there's no inventory out there. No inventory out there really in any market. And I don't have to tell you, if you're an agent that's full-time or even a part-time agent that's worked with buyers, that finding a buyer home in today's market is not easy, right? And you can be totally qualified. You can bid the asking price. You can do everything that you want to do to try to get a house, and you may still not get a house, right? So you could have a ready, willing, and able buyer and still not make money. The third reason is that even if you have a ready, willing, and able buyer, and even if they put a property under contract, your dollar per hour is almost always lower. You're almost always, if you track your hours, going to spend more time working with buyers than working with sellers. Okay, so literally, if you're just, putting them up on the board and say, hey, how many hours did I spend with a buyer getting a deal done, and how many hours did I spend with a listing getting that deal done, you're going to spend less hours getting the listing done. Therefore, your dollar per hour is going to be higher. And oh, by the way, in a lot of cases, if you're obtaining a 5% listing, a lot of agents are offering out 2%. Therefore, they're actually making more money and working less time. So the dollar per hour is almost always going to be a bit bigger on the listing side. Okay. Another main reason to work and build a seller-based business is that building a buyer-based business is almost impossible to systematize, much harder to systematize, while working a seller-based business is very easy to systematize. What do I mean by systematize? Well, if you think about the actual things that you do on the listing side of the business, the seller side of the business, typically, no matter, how big your company is, at the listing side of the business, you're probably going to be the one going out on the appointment meeting with that seller, because that's one of the highest and best uses of your time. But after that initial meeting, a lot of the other pieces of that transaction can be done by a virtual assistant, by an admin, by a buyer's agent, whether it be getting the listing into the multiple listing service, whether it be fielding the calls from other agents, whether it be hosting the open house, whether it be, so many other components of that transaction. The listing side of the business, outside of probably meeting with the seller in their living room and negotiating the offers, all of the rest of the things are transactional things that can be systematized. Whereas on the buyer side, it's very difficult to hand off a buyer lead for so many different reasons, right? Buyer, when you work with buyers, you're actually seeing them face to face a lot. So if you're trying to hand off a buyer to somebody else, a lot of buyers don't want that. And at every point kind of along the way, even so, it's even just harder just to hand off something to somebody else. And whatever you're handing off on the buyer side, most of it's going to be work that needs to be done by a licensed agent. So it's just so much easier to scale than anything else. The other reason why you want to run a listing-based business is just it's just the secondary transaction component of it. So you take a listing, you put a sign in the ground, you're going to get calls on that sign. You put a listing on the MLS, and you're going to have an open house, and you're going to get unrepresented buyers that walk through that door. Most super successful agents will tell you that for every listing you get, you should get another piece of business from that listing. Whereas again, on the buyer side, that's not necessarily the case. Also, on the listing side of the business, you also have the opportunity to earn both sides of the commission in some cases, right? When you're working with a buyer and you're making an offer on the home, there is a 0% chance that you're going to get the listing portion of that commission. But when you take a listing, there is a chance in some cases that you're going to get both sides of the commission. And when I was an active selling agent, maybe that would happen to me 1 out of every 10 times. But again, just more reasons why your dollar per hour is higher on the seller side. Okay. We talked about the scalability, also the ability kind of like build a team. So it's very difficult to build like a buyer-based team where you're still making money, but it is very easy for you to have a small team where you're basically the listing agent. Then you generate transactions or leads from your listings, whether that be sign calls or Facebook ads or open houses, and then you're able to hand off those leads to other people who are on your team. Okay. Another reason why basically, working sellers and working the cash offer component of this business is so important is a lot of people struggle to get face-to-face seller appointments. I mean, it's the biggest reason why most people don't have a seller-based business is because it in general is a little bit easier to find a buyer than it is to find a seller. But where this kind of changes and where what we've taught and what we've done in practice in our market and in other markets, by the way, that's proven to be so effective is rather than basically going out there and calling or door knocking or sending a letter basically saying, hey, I'm an agent, let me tell you the value of your house. If you're using a cash offer call to action, you are going to generate many more appointments than if you were to go out and say, hey, let me actually just give you an idea of what your property's worth, right? In this market, kind of everybody mostly knows kind of what their house is worth, but not everybody knows what a cash offer is going to be on their home. So by having what we call a cash offer call to action, where we say, hey, if you're interested, in seeing what an offer on your home would be, give me a call. That's a game changer. And, our team, we booked 141 seller appointments last week. Now, of course, if you're listening to this, you're not going to book 141 seller appointments out of the gate. But it's definitely possible to book 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 seller appointments a week based on the various strategies that we teach in the agent investor community. And it's something that is extremely worthwhile for sure. Okay, so talk about some other reasons why it's so important to build a seller side business. Okay, so we talked kind of just in general about all of the reasons, the retail reasons why it makes sense to go after sellers and not buyers. But we haven't even taken into consideration the actual investing side of the business. So when we talk about investing in general, there's 3 things that agent investors need to get good at, right? Number 1, finding deals. Number 2, finding money. And number 3, getting good at the construction side of the business. Now, most of you have probably heard about our agent investor partnership program, where if you work with us, if you find a deal, we'll put up the money and we'll do the construction and then split the profits 50-50. We actually signed 3 agent partnership deals last week where the agent found the deal. We're going to put up the money, and then we're going to do the construction, and then we're going to split the profits with the agents 50-50. Now, if you haven't heard that much about it or want to know much more about it, we're actually going to be hosting an event in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, pretty much 1 month from today, the second Tuesday in September, which you can register for now at www.agentinvestorevent.com. And if you kind of look at what's up on the screen right now, I have that link out there, www.agentinvestorevent.com. If you are interested in partnering with us on deals where you find an off-market lead, we go on the appointment with you, we help you close it, we put up the money, we do all the construction, and then we split the profits with you 50-50, make sure that you're registered for that event. Not only at the event are we going to show you how the partnership deal works, but we're also going to teach you how to find off-market deals, even if you've never found an off-market deal before, even if you have no marketing budget. We're going to show you how you as an agent can generate off-market deals without putting in a ton of time, effort, and energy. And a recent example of that, by the way, which is kind of a crazy one, is we had an agent that actually works for our company. I did a post about him, Henry Nugent, who went to, it's crazy, he went to a continuing education class. He was just networking with other agents. Another agent he bumped into said, hey, I've got an off-market transaction, looking for a cash buyer. It's a home in Quincy. And Henry referred us that deal. He just bumped into another agent that had an off-market transaction. We bought that house maybe a month ago at this point, and all Henry did was have his ears open. And he didn't put up any money. We're doing the construction, and we're going to split the profits with him 50-50. So that's an example where Henry will probably make somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $40,000 just by showing up at a CE event and having his ears open. So at the event, we're going to teach you a bunch of ways like that are not going to take up a ton of time, effort, and energy on your behalf, but could produce 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 off-market opportunities a year where you're not doing any of the work. Okay, so we talked about the fact that giving a cash offer is going to get you in the door more. We talked about why focusing on sellers is so important. What I didn't mention is the fact that if you're going to give a cash offer, call to action, if you're going to say or send a letter or knock on a door or make a call or send a text or do a post and say, hey, I'm looking for homes to buy, you need to actually have a buyer. So that's part of the reason why a lot of people end up joining the inner circle, is because of the fact that we'll partner with people on deals. We'll go on the appointments with them. We'll help them analyze the deal, and we'll go out and we'll buy it and then split the profits. But if you want to do the deals yourself, or you have another investor that's willing to do kind of the same thing that we're doing, all that you need to know there is if you're prospecting, you're out there and you're generating these opportunities, that you just need to have a legitimate cash buyer who will do these transactions. Okay. So now I want to talk about the how, because we talked a lot about like why we need to build a seller-based business. I talked about the fact that it's going to actually make you do more retail transactions, right? I don't think there's anybody who's listening on this call right now that would think if they get 1, 2, 3, 4 or more seller appointments per week, that their retail business is going to suffer, right? So there's no doubt that if you're out there prospecting for sellers on a day-to-day basis, that you are going to run into more transactions. And actually, it's interesting because at maybe like 2 or 3 events ago, I had a panel of people that I've worked with, whether they're at my company or whether they're just in the inner circle through other mechanisms. And Mike Weatherby, who's an agent of mine, at that moment, I don't know when it was like February of this year. And we pulled up our company stats, and we looked to see who had the highest volume through the first 2 or 3 months of the year. And it was Mike. And I asked him, he was on the stage, and I said, Mike, you've already sold, I don't know what it was. It was like $10 million of real estate in the first 2 months. It was something ridiculous, right? In the first 2 months. And I said, Mike, I said, would you even consider yourself an agent? And he said, no. Like, I consider myself an investor who's out looking for deals. And I said, well, it's crazy though, because you've already done whatever it is, $20 million of volume in the first 2 months of the year, just from looking for deals. So that's not to take into consideration that he has people he passes off buyer leads to, he's got a team and all that good stuff. But I want to talk about the how, because we've talked about why. And I think anybody who's listening right now is in agreement. Like, hey, if I could get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 more seller appointments per week, I'd be like jumping up and down. And maybe some of you who are on the call want to do even more than that. But the methods and the mechanisms are always kind of going to be the same. So when we talk about generating seller appointments using a cash offer call to action, I'm always going to think about it from the same way. I'm always going to look at it and say, I want to do 2 things. Number one, I want to make sure that my sphere of influence knows I'm looking for seller appointments, I'm looking for deals. And number 2, I want to pick another lead generation strategy outside of my sphere of influence. And again, I would give the same advice to somebody who said, I don't want to invest at all. I don't want to do cash offer transactions at all. I would always say the easiest way to get business is always going to be your SOI. There's no doubt about it, because the people that are in your SOI already know, like, and trust you. So the first thing I would focus on in order to generate cash offer deals is your SOI. And I mentioned this last week on the live stream, that at my last event, I asked people in the room, it was a room full of 50 people. I said, how many agents here, how many of your clients know that you invest in real estate? I kid you not, 1.5 people raised their hand. Like, one person, raised their hand straight up in the air. The other person half raised it. They were like, kind of. So for most of you who are on this call, if you haven't done a really good job of letting your clients know that you not only invest in real estate, but that you're looking for houses that need work. You're looking for houses, you offer this easy sale process where you'll come in, you buy the house as is, no inspection, no open house, etc. If you are not adding people to your Facebook, your social media account every single day, if you're not posting 2 or 3 times a week about that, you're missing the boat. If you're not sending 2 or 3 emails, 2 or 3 emails a month about that, you're missing the boat. If you're not, hosting investor events or bringing people to our events, you're missing the boat. So you want to kind of change, like, the way that you're approaching your clients. Yes, your clients, of course, their friends, their family, whatever, but most of them don't know that you invest. So that would be the first thing I would tackle if it hasn't been tackled already. A lot of people make the mistake of trying to go to some other prospecting method first before tackling their SOI. And if you think about it, statistically, that's kind of like going backwards. Because if you do a mailer, or you cold call, or you text message, or you door knock, or you buy leads online, you do Google pay-per-click ads or whatever, like, you're always going to have a lower probability of closing those leads than the leads that come from your SOI. So I would focus a lot of time, effort, and energy on building out campaigns to let your client base know that you're not only an investor, that you can also help them invest, and that you're looking for great opportunities, or not even a great opportunity. Hey, I'm looking for houses that need some work. Because one thing I always say to people, and it's kind of a hard thing to grasp, but I mentioned that we went on 141 appointments last week. Out of those 141 appointments that we went on last week, almost each and every one of them said, hey, you're my cash buyer person, but I also have a friend who's an agent if I'm going to list the property. Well, why are they saying that? Why are 141 people calling 2 people instead of 141 people calling one agent who can also produce them, a cash offer? And so what happens in a lot of cases, in agents that are on this call, you may have lost a deal to me. Like, I may have went out on an appointment with somebody in your SOI that called me first, because they always call the cash offer person first, because they want to see what I can offer. If they like what I can offer, in their mind, they're saving on the commission, they don't want to call their friend. They call their friend after. They call their friend after they determine, hey, a cash offer isn't going to work for me, then they call their friend and say, hey, I want you to come, potentially list my house. So I would max out everything that you can do with your SOI first, and then think about another lead generation strategy, next. And as we're going, again, of course, we're live. I want to just put it out there really quick. Like, does anybody have any questions at this point on why you would build a seller-based business, why building a seller-based business actually increases the amount of transactions that you're going to do on the retail side of the business? Any how so far, or any questions in general about building a seller-based business, put them into the comment section. And if there's nothing, that's okay. I'm going to continue on. But the other reason I wanted to just talk about really quickly about building a seller-based business related to the partnership deals that we offer is just how much more it's going to bump up your income per year. So think about this. Typically about 1 out of every 10 people that we meet with takes our cash offer, right? So that means that for every 10 listings that you take, you're going to generate 1 cash offer. So if you think about it like this, on every listing that you take, right? Let's say that you on average make $10,000 per listing. And again, depending on what market you're in, that could change. But let's say you make $10,000 per listing. Let's say that you take 10 listings. Okay, that's $100,000. 1 partner deal with us, the average profit is $60,000. You're going to make 30. So by basically trading, one of those listings for a cash offer deal with us, you're going to make, instead of making $100,000, you're going to make $130,000, right? You're going to make an extra $30,000. Your income is going to go up 30% on each one of those transactions. So I listed a bunch of reasons to do this, but that's another one as well. And we actually split a deal with a team WB. They found a deal. Their friend's mom passed away. They wanted to sell it directly. And long story short, it ended up being, this is, our biggest success story, but it ended up being a $200,000 profit. So they got cut a $100,000 check at the closing, which is more than most agents make in a year. Okay. All right. So getting back to kind of like how you do it. So if you're committed to doing this and you've kind of like maxed out your SOI, which I would think about doing, you should be able to pull, 1, appointment every week, or 1 appointment kind of like every other week, from your SOI. Then you need to start thinking about like, okay, well, how do I generate more than that? How do I get face-to-face seller appointments that aren't just, from my SOI? And I did a long session last week on the different mechanisms, and I'm going to cover them kind of really quick, just so people kind of get an understanding of what you might want to do. So when we talk about generating seller appointments, I always start first with, do people want to spend time or do they want to spend money? So if you want to spend money and you want to mail or do Google pay-per-click or Facebook ads or whatever, on average, it's going to cost you between $500 and $1,000 per appointment. And if you think about it kind of like logically, it's a profit center, right? Even if it costs you $1,000 per appointment and it takes you 10 appointments to get 1 investor deal, you're going to spend $10,000 to make $30,000 if you're splitting, the profit with us 50-50. So you have an incredible opportunity if you are willing to spend money. And if you're going to spend money, you need to spend at least $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 a month, in my opinion, or else it's just going to be a little bit too slow for it to be worthwhile. So if you're going to spend money, you're either going to spend money on mailers, or you're going to spend money on pay-per-click, or you're going to spend money on Facebook. And there's pros and cons to kind of all of those approaches. But most of the time when I tell people what the cost is, most of the time they say, okay, well, that's great. Maybe I'll, spend some money down the line. But for now, I want to focus on, spending, my time. So if you're going to spend your time and you've maxed out your SOI, then there's really only a few mechanisms that work. The first is what we call agent relationships, where you're talking to every agent under the sun that that you co-broke with, that sells homes in the areas where you want to get investor deals. and you just ask them, hey, do you have any, investor opportunities that come up? And you would want to work out a deal with them to make sure it would be worthwhile for them to send you the referral. There's a lot of different ways to do that. But basically creating like an agent relationship referral mechanism is one way to get these deals. If you do utilize that strategy, which is a great strategy, the only negative to that one is that you're not going to get any listings from it. So you're not dealing directly with the sellers. You're dealing directly with other agents. Okay. A direct to seller campaign would either be door knocking, calling, or texting. And when people think about those three strategies, I always, say to people, the best strategy is the one that you're going to do every single day. So if you're willing to door knock, 5 days a week or 4 days a week, or you're willing to call 4 or 5 days a week, or you're willing to text 4 or 5 days a week, those are kind of like the free strategies that you can implement in your business. Now, they're all fairly simple, talking about the cash offer call to action, whether you send a text message, whether you call, or whether you knock on the door. It's all going to be pretty simple. Hey, my name is, Tom Caffarella. I'm an agent in the area. I work with home buyers that are looking to buy homes in this area. Was you ever considering offer, now or any point in the next year or two? And, create a database of all of those calls and all of those potentials. And you're going to get a lot of people who tell you no. You're going to get a lot of people that are going to tell you not now, which if you have a good CRM, you can use tagging mechanisms. If you're in the inner circle, we give you Follow-Up Boss, and we have all sorts of ways that we tag leads within the Follow-Up Boss CRM in order to make sure that you're following up on your leads the correct way. And then you're going to get some people that are going to, they're going to be ready right now. And so when I used to, out of those three methods, really texting wasn't a thing when I first started, but I like door knocking. And what I used to do is I used to take a bunch of sheets with me, property information sheets. Actually, I'm curious to see if I even still have these. If I do, I'm going to share them right now. Sometimes I have a lot of old stuff. In my Dropbox. Give me one more second to see if I have these. All right, I do have them. All right, so I'm going to share them with you guys now. So this is the sheet that I used to use when I was door knocking, and this is just this. Today's session is not necessarily meant to be like a how to do everything type of thing, but I wanted to kind of just share with you guys, some of the stuff that I used to use. And so I used to use this sheet, and I would walk around and I would door knock on properties, and I would write in the condition of the home, obviously the address up top. I put the condition of the home. Then I put any detractors, homeowner demographics. I would look to see, hey, is this like a newlywed couple that just bought a house? Are they, ever considering selling or not? And then, were they home? Are they interested in selling at any point in the next 1 to 3 years? Did I leave a yellow note, and was a picture taken? So I take a picture of the house to see, whether it looked like a house that maybe was something that, an investor would buy. And then at the end of the day, I would upload all of these into my CRM just to make sure, that I had everything that I needed, right, in my CRM. Let me just see if I have the door hangers too. I'm just curious if I have these. And I'll tell you guys some of the results that I used to get from this. Yeah, door hanger front. Hopefully this pops up. No, this wasn't it. That's interesting. But anyways, I digress a little bit. Let me just unshare my screen. But yeah, so if you're going to generate these appointments every single week, you've got to pick a strategy. Are you going to spend money? Are you going to spend the $500 to $1,000 a week with money, or are you going to call or text message, or are you going to door knock? And it just needs to be done repeatedly. And like I said, kind of in the beginning, I'm such a big proponent of doing this for so many different reasons. First, I'm worried about buyer agency in general with the settlement coming up. I'm worried about working with buyers in general, even if there wasn't the MLS PIN settlement, because it takes so much time, effort, and energy to work with buyers. I'm worried about working with buyers because it's not scalable. It's harder to predict the income. But more than anything else, I'm worried about working with buyers because it's not leading you towards investing. And if you guys kind of think back to like how most people become millionaires in real estate, it's through a strategy that we call like the buy three, hold one strategy. This is the most common strategy that I took, and most other investors, when they start off with not a bunch of money, end up taking. Because at the end of the day, we're talking a little bit more about flipping. And sometimes people say, well, I don't want to flip, I want to buy and hold. And I always tell people, well, a lot of times you have to flip in order to buy and hold. And let me tell you why. Because most people start out with not a bunch of money, and you don't have, $100,000 to keep throwing down on multifamilies, right? Most of us don't. So how do we obtain that money? How do we generate big chunks of income that we can then use to put our money to work to buy assets that are going to throw off passive income? Well, the answer is, instead of listing those 1 out of every 10 houses that we can flip, we buy them. You guys partner with us. And if on average you're making $30,000 in each one of those, all you need to do is 2 or 3 of those to then have the ability to actually go out and hold a house. So like I talked about, you're talking about, buying 3 or partnering with us on 3 and then holding 1, meaning that like it takes 2 or 3 flips to have enough money to hold 1. And if you can do 2 or 3 flips a year and you hold 1 per year, you've got 1 asset per year. And if you're buying a 3-family every year, and on average it's cash flowing $500 per unit, that's $1,500 a month. That is $18,000 a year, right? How many of those do we need to make 6 figures, right? We need about 5 of those, which means that like in a 5 or 6 or a 7-year period, if you just follow these simple strategies to get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 flip deals per year, and you partner with us on these deals, you're going to be able to accumulate 1 multifamily per year. And in 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years, you're going to have a 6-figure per year passive income stream. Kind of crazy when you think about it. And I'll be completely honest with you, most people just don't take the action in order to do it, right? So that's where it comes down to like making a commitment to actually following these strategies, coming to all of our events, listening to all of our podcasts, and then actually implementing, and if you can, join the inner circle, because then you can get direct one-to-one help with anything that you need help with, right? So if you're stuck on which marketing strategy you should pick, if you're stuck on, hey, what should I post to my SOI? If you're stuck on, what city should I market in? Or, how should I approach this? Or, hey, I want somebody to come out on an appointment with me. Or, hey, I'm not sure if this is a deal. Can you evaluate, that for me? That's the entire reason that the inner circle was created. Like, you guys can kind of listen to me, and I'm sure you pick up, some good information just being kind of like a fly on the wall for these type of things. But to make real progress, to make the commitment necessary in order to get financially free, getting individual one-on-one help is going to be a game changer for you. And I already gave the link earlier today, but if you're wanting to learn more about what the inner circle looks like and you haven't jumped on a call with me yet, make sure you do so. You can do that at agentinvestorinnercircle.com. And you can do that anytime, any day. And we'll talk about where you're at today with your investing business, where you want to go in 5 to 10 years. And then we'll put together a plan on the call on how to bridge the gap. And then we'll talk about whether or not, it makes sense for you to join the inner circle. For people who know me, I'm not necessarily the best salesperson. I'm definitely not a pushy salesperson. So the objective of you jumping on one of those calls is just to make sure that you're getting what you need. And if it literally does make sense for you to join, I will push you to join if it makes sense. But if it doesn't make sense, then, we'll end the call. So that's www.agentinvestorinnercircle.com. And so does anybody have any questions at this point? I'm going to open it up again to the chat section for anybody that has any questions about why you need to build a seller-based business, how to do it, maybe what our partnership opportunities look like, how to work with us, etc. All right, well, we got plenty of people on the line. I don't see any questions coming in. So if there's no questions, I'll just say this. There is the next two Tuesday at 11s for the live stream are canceled. I mentioned this in the group. My son has a hockey camp that's 9 to 12. So I'm going to be out for the next 2 weeks. But I will be back. The kids are back to school, I think August 31st. And from there on out, I don't have anything that could potentially pop up. So I'm going to take the next 2 weeks off. If you haven't already registered for the event coming up on how to partner with us, I'd highly recommend you do so at www.agentinvestorevent.com. I'd love to see more and more of you at the event. We're going to be teaching at the event not only how the partnership works. We're going to be talking to agents that have actually already partnered with us, what the outcomes have been. But then we're going to teach you how to find those deals. So I talked really briefly about deal finding today. I'm going to spend a lot more time in depth about how to find deals at the actual event. So if you haven't registered yet, go to www.agentinvestorevent.com. Like I said, guys, get off the sidelines. If you're on the sidelines now, make a commitment to building a seller-based business, to investing. Sales will make you a living, right? You can make $100,000 a year selling houses, but investing will make you wealthy. All right. It's not about earning $100,000 a year. It's about earning $100,000 a year passively. That's where the life-changing stuff kind of, starts to come in. So thank you all for tuning in. And if there's any way I can help you in between now and the event, please reach out.